Hey, I'm Andy, and welcome to Rock, Roll, and Red Plaid.
Our guest this week is country singer Elisa Smith. We talk about all kinds of interesting things, the growth of country music, singing her own original material, and even meeting Garth Brooks. It's a very interesting episode. Come on and check it out.
All right, Rock, Roll, and Red Plaid podcast season 2. Here with Elisa Smith. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Um, I guess you could say the way. I guess you could say the way we met is that you were looking for a guitar player at one point, and then we were gonna try and figure something out, and then I jokingly say, "Am I too rock for the country scene?"
There's
No.
no such thing as too rock for the country scene,
Mm, that was
in my
actually
opinion, in my humble opinion.
see that was one of my that was see that was one of my questions is that um a lot of hybridizing, I guess I call it, of musical genres are winding up into country music. Some people are not for it really, and then some people like you and I are like full hog, full all the way into it. So I guess you're among the latter where you're really for it. I would figure.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I'm just a huge fan of creativity in general, and I think that, I don't like it when things are stagnant. I like it when people push the envelope and try new things, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. But, the only way you're going to figure out if they don't work is if you do it, right? So I think, I love how people have been mixing a lot of genres together. And also I think, it does a huge service to the people that listen to that music too, right? Because it kind of opens their minds to not only different sounds, but also different perspectives that they might not necessarily be exposed to in their regular everyday life. So I'm always a huge fan of pulling inspiration from a lot of different places and mixing things and trying new things.
Absolutely. I was thinking of just this morning. I had thought about for my next album to cover a Florida Georgia Line tune,
Hmm.
and
Which one?
Confession,
That's a great one.
because just is one of my favorites.
Mhm.
That one, the percussion in that is almost like that of a percussion ensemble from like a marching band.
Yeah.
That whoever or however many drummers they had in that session, I don't know. But then there's a song they did, I think it was called "It's Just What We Do," where it
Hmm.
goes from a rock, like a real heavy rock thing, and then the verses are him rapping in a really heavy twang.
Yeah.
Like where
What
it's
is happening?
like your mind gets you know thrown into this like crazy world that they live in, and it's like, you know what, they were listening to this, they were listening to this, and they were
Hmm.
listening to this, and they all put
Hmm.
it in the soup, and that's where it goes.
Yeah, exactly.
Love it. I was gonna ask, your who was the first artist or song that made you want to play music?
My dad.
Oh, that's awesome. Elaborate, if you will.
Yeah, so I grew up in rural Illinois, and my dad was the person that was in charge of leading music at our church. And so he's a really, really talented guitar player. And so I mean, honestly, one of my earliest memories is listening to him play guitar. We had this big, huge vaulted living room where he would sit and play his guitar, and it would just resonate, and it just sounded amazing. And he'd play, all the songs and the hymns and the gospel tunes. And I would take all of my stuffed animals and I would pile them into his guitar case. And I'd sit in his guitar case with my stuffed animals and just listen to him play for like hours. And
That's awesome.
yeah, and I think like that's when I got the bug. And it's funny. So I have I have two children, but I have a year and a half year old daughter.
Mhm.
And she's also got the bug because she'll do the same exact thing when I play my guitar. She'll grab her stuffed animal and she'll sit in my guitar case. And it's like such a beautiful thing to see because it, obviously reminds me of myself when I was a little
Sure.
girl. So, I think in terms of, when did I first realize that I really loved music and wanted to do that for my life? It was because my dad.
Awesome. I've heard more and more people say that. Not that anyone, I would say, discouraged anyone from music, but it's just like more and more you hear that, especially in um and you said you're from Illinois originally, or
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Um I don't know what it is. It's just like, well, my I don't know if you come from a big family or not, but
Pretty big. Yeah.
okay,
I
okay,
have three other siblings that are
gotcha,
all sisters. Yeah.
gotcha. Because my mom's the youngest of four, and
I'm the youngest of four.
okay, all right, there you go. And my dad's the fifth out of six boys,
Oh,
so
wow, really? So my dad is the oldest out of six.
wacky.
Yeah, I know.
But they both my parents are really love. They overlap genres of music, but then there's stuff that they each individually love, and um, I jokingly say I creatively acquired a boombox from my dad and a CD from my mom, and it was a Queen CD, and that's the first person I heard on
Oh, yeah,
their
that's a
guitar,
great
and
one.
it's like, all right, and it was just like, okay, that's what I want to do. That's it,
That's, yeah, that's a great one. I mean, I listened to my dad play guitar, but then there was also there was this huge, like, before music festivals were like really a thing, right? Because this, we're talking like early 90s here. So
Sure.
I there was this rock festival that would happen every year in central Illinois, and we would go every year, and it was hugely formative for my life and the way that I move about the world, particularly within music. And so um it was this huge festival on this farm, and there was tons of musicians and huge acts that would come through, and they took me ever since I was a baby, since I was like 6 months old, and I went from when
Nice.
I was 6 months old all the way through high school. And in high school I actually started doing sound for the main amphitheater stage, which was like a 70,000 person amphitheater, which that was wild, getting to do sound on a stage like that. But I think that, those experiences too, of like going to concerts and going to festivals and seeing people play up on stage, like, that was so formative because I saw people doing that and I was like, I want to do that. That's exactly what I want to do with my life, is perform and play and sing, and so those early memories, I think, so there was that. And then in addition to that, my dad would take me to concerts all the time when I was a kid. So we saw Santana and Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young. So we saw all these kind of older acts that he used to listen to when he was a kid.
Sure.
And I think, talking about my influences in my music, that was hugely influential as well. Being exposed to that like really 70s rock and roll kind of vibe, plays a huge part in the music that I create. So, it's like you said, it's like you pull from here, you pull from there, you pull from here, and then you make a soup, and then you get what you get.
Yeah. Excuse me. I'm right there with you. I'm trying to get
Yeah.
the thing there. This weather, I mean, it's the New England weather is yeah, it's exactly
Yeah,
that.
it's the New England weather. You never really know what to expect.
At this point I'm sounding better than I did this morning. I was literally sounding like a bullfrog this morning. So
Oh gosh.
yeah, I'm not sick. It's just whatever's out there, seasonal allergies or complete year-round allergies. It's like, does that must affect you to an extent as a singer, I'd figure. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does. So it's funny. So I used to get really bad allergies back in Illinois when I was a kid, and then I moved to New England, and I still get them every once in a while, but it's not nearly as bad as it was in Illinois. And my honestly, my secret is just getting like as local of honey as possible,
I
because
was
all of
just gonna
the,
say,
yeah. So once I started doing that, like, I don't really have any problems anymore, which is great.
right. I was gonna say, I don't know. I'm in Danvers, so I don't.
Oh yeah, we're close by. I'm in Marblehead.
There it is. Okay, I used to teach in Marblehead,
Oh really?
at the community center there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just funny because like I have a thing of local honey in the cupboard here, so I might be dipping into that today.
Yeah. It makes
Yeah,
a huge difference. It helps.
yeah. I mean, being whatever it is, the local bees. I don't know, the local pollen or whatever
Yeah.
is
Yep.
whatever's in your because you're local. we're always here. So
Yep.
it's one of
Yeah.
those weird things, Um, you got to yeah. Before I get to this, I'll preface it with this. Some of my earliest musical memories are being with my mom in my grandmother's kitchen, listening to Garth Brooks,
Oh yeah.
and you know where I'm going with this. You got to tell me how that happened, like the whole backstory. What do you got
Yeah.
with Mr. B there?
Yeah, it was wild, man. It was wild. So I was at Harvard getting my degree in a master's in education because I really realized, I love music, I love performing, but I was feeling a little burnt out, and so I also was really passionate about music education, and so I knew that I wanted to kind of go that route through doing some work with Berklee College of Music, and so I went to Harvard to go get my master's, and he and Trisha Yearwood came. They were putting together a series with all these famous people, like David Duchovny did it, and he and Trisha did it. And so they came and I think they were supposed to talk about their work in the education field and all the wonderful work that they've done there. But they ended up talking about just kind of their experiences in the music industry and, talking about, Trisha talked about how hard it is to be a woman in the music industry, and Garth talked about that as well. Um, and it was fascinating. It was just a fascinating talk about them starting from nowhere in humble beginnings to you know where they are today, right?
Stadiums,
Yeah, like sold
literally.
out stadiums, right? And so during that talk, Garth mentioned that he really struggled with stage fright, and at the time, so I had gone to Berkeley to get my undergraduate degree, and it was a very different place when I went there than what it is now. And so, they didn't have a lot of the programming that they have now, and it was a little bit more kind of boxish. They would kind of put you in some boxes. And so, unfortunately, an outgrowth of that was that I just lost a lot of my confidence that I had. And so when Garth said that he still gets stage fright, even though he's playing to like sold out stadiums multiple nights a
Hard
week.
to believe
I
how
just
nuts.
was even right. It was
Because
nuts. I was like, what?
he gets up there and he just hollers and goes
He loves it.
ballistic.
Yeah, And so I was like, what? That's insane. There's no way. And so, what he had said was, I right before I get on stage, I get really stage fright and I feel butterflies and I get really nervous. And then I just walk out on stage and I play that first note and then I settle in and I say, oh, right, right. I remind myself, like, no,
Yeah.
this is what you love to do.
Yeah.
Right. And so what I wanted to know was like, how do you even get yourself to go out on stage in the first place? Right. Because it was something that I had loved to do, but then, things happened and I just really lost my confidence.
Mm.
It's like how Stella got her groove back. Right. So,
Nice.
so yeah. Right. So
Sorry, that was way over laughing for it. It's just like when I was that's just what I was thinking. I'm like, oh, sorry. It's like I read
yeah, it's
your
like,
mind
yeah, I mean,
there. Sorry. Go ahead. I'm
so
sorry.
so at the end of the talk, there was like a Q&A session and so I raised my hand and I asked him like, hey, like I went to Berkeley, I'm a musician. I really love to perform, but I still really struggle with stage fright. So like, how do you even get yourself to walk out on stage in the first place? And so he asked me my name. He's like, what's your name? And I was like, I told my name. And he's like, well, what do you play? I was like, I play guitar. And he's like, what kind of music do you play? And I was like, I play country music. And so like you heard this little like chuckle kind of like resonate around
Can I?
the hall. Yeah,
Yeah.
like he gets this like little smirk. I'm like never gonna forget this for as long as I live, unless I get like Alzheimer's. But he got this little smirk on his face and he goes, well, this is what we call being baptized by fire. Get on up here and play us a song. And so he invited me up on stage in front of like 400 people to play a song. He gave me his guitar to play it. And then he went and sat next to my friends. And so my friends were like freaking out because they were like, oh my God, I'm sitting next to Garth Brooks. So he went and like went to the crowd and sat next to my friends. And then I played a song and it was, it was terrible. I had performed in like 6 years. So it was a little rough. But I did it. I got up there and I did it. And it was amazing, and so after the talk, after the Q&A session, he and Trisha are like two of the most genuinely friendly, kind, compassionate people I've ever met in my life.
They really
like,
seem to be honest.
They truly are, like in a very, very much authentic way, right? Like they're not faking an ounce of it. And so, after everything was over, he was like hanging around, they both were hanging around to like sign CDs and give autographs and talk to people and stuff. So I kind of just held back and I waited to talk to them. And so I kind of waited for the room to clear out. And, I went up to them and I was like, I don't need an autograph or anything. I just am really grateful for the opportunity that you just gave me because I think you've really changed my life. And so he was like, well, I have something for you. And I was like, oh, really? So he like takes a guitar pick out from his pocket and he's like, this is for you. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, thank you so much. I will treasure this. Like, this is so wonderful. How generous. And he was like, well, you're going to need something to play it with. I was like, what? And so he takes his guitar out from behind him and gives me his guitar. And it was the guitar that he was touring with. So it had his like scratches on it. It had, it had all of his which there's more scratches on it now from me, but it had
what do
all
you
of,
call that? War wounds or something?
yeah, war wounds. It had all the war wounds. And so I was like, I can't take this. And Trisha was like, you have to, like, you don't have a choice. And so I was like,
Yeah.
okay. So, yeah. And so it was crazy. It was like a 180. It's like, I like that week I went out and started playing open mics and then I got myself a band and, I had always been writing, even though I wasn't playing out, I was
Yeah.
writing, a lot.
Mhm.
So I had a lot of material to work with and play with. But, so I went out and started playing and, it was wild. And, and so, we kept in touch over the years and his, drummer, was one of the co-producers on my first full-length record, Baptized by Fire, which I named
I was gonna
Baptized
say,
by
I was
Fire for
like, that
obvious
sounds
reasons. But
familiar.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yep, yeah. So it's wild, it's like I am eternally grateful for him and Trisha and how much they've just changed my life and really
It's
lit
awesome.
that fire back in me and gave me the confidence to perform. And now I love it. I love performing. I love talking to people. I love being in front of people. I love playing music. It's such a huge gift that they have given back to me, and I will be like forever in their debt.
They really seem like the Mikasa Sukasa type of people. It's
Yeah.
like, even if it's like, I like almost the next door neighbor vibe.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh, that's Garth and Trisha who live down the street. It's like, oh yeah, hi. It's like they just seem to
Yeah.
be, what's the genuine article.
The genuine oracle. Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
my son is pouring through my window now. There's a
I
certain type of
oh
day where
it's
now all
no
the leaves
problem.
are off the tree.
I have gotten a light, but I haven't opened the box
Oh,
yet.
ring light.
So yeah,
It's just there's this window, and now that all the trees are off the leaves, or wait, leaves are off the trees,
I knew what you meant.
it's just like pouring and it like blinds me every day at like noon.
Well
So,
then, yeah,
I
that's
mean, I'm
about
grateful.
right.
I'm grateful for the vitamin D, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's a little bit much.
Do you I mean, I would figure, even though playing in front of Garth was, of course, the most one of the most amazing things. Do you have a best gig or worst gig that sticks out? Like,
Yeah.
I guess you could say, what constitutes a good gig versus a nightmare gig for you?
Honestly, the biggest difference, and I'm sure you've heard this before, the biggest difference is just the sound. That's why I always try to make friends with the sound people because,
Oh yes.
it can make or break your experience. And so,
Oh yes.
yeah, so I think my best gigs have always been ones where the sound was great. I could hear myself, I could hear my band, the crowd could hear it, it was clear. The worst gigs are the ones where I couldn't hear anything,
Why? That's why I just got a pair of these.
the in-ears, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you know, yeah, like I think that like we played a gig relatively recently, and thankfully it was just like a short gig. It was just like a 45-minute set, so it wasn't like one of these 3-hour long hauls that we do. But the guy had just fired his sound guy the night before, and he was so sweet and he was really apologetic and he had no idea what he was doing. But it was, I mean, the gig itself was fun because we were like, all right, well, this is what it is, so we're just gonna make the best of it. And we're all pretty like convivial people, me and my bandmates, but you know, it was it was rough, man. Like we
Oh
couldn't hear
yeah.
anything. We couldn't hear anything. And so, it's funny because it's like that was a fun gig because we just made the best of it, but it was also a pretty rough gig because
Oh
it was
yeah.
not.
I One of my favorite gigs I've ever played was done in Manchester, New Hampshire, but the sound system was fantastic,
Mm.
but the sound guys were idiots.
Oh, that's too bad.
No disrespect to them. It's like, I don't think there's necessarily a hiring qualification for people to do sound in pubs or clubs or whatever.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. I
you
mean,
know
it
what I mean?
depends, right? It depends, but yeah.
You know what I mean? If it's like if it's like the Middle East or something, that's a given.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, the Middle East is a club in Boston.
Yeah. I think honestly, I think one of my most favorite gigs that I ever played was at the Basement in Nashville. The
Oh,
OG
okay.
basement, not the basement east, the OG basement. That was a really fun time. It was a release party for my first EP, Hitch a Ride.
Right
And
on.
all the players that played on the record were there and played for the gig. That was a lot of fun. That was a great time.
Shows and shows and shows. I'm sure we could go on forever on that. But I actually have a question from one of the podcast listeners, who just by chance this week it happens to be my mom.
Oh, a question for me?
Yeah, actually,
Oh.
we were listening to your stuff last night, and she her question, it's kind of a two-part question. She goes,
Mhm.
are there many country fans in this area? I guess she means kind of
Mhm.
Boston, New England.
Mhm.
Do you have difficulties getting gigs in the area?
A good
Um,
question.
yeah.
It's a really good two-parter. So I don't know if it's released yet, but I did an interview recently with a pretty well-known paper up here about that. It was right after the Zach Brown concert. I'm sorry, this sun is like in my face.
It's
So
it's okay. Yeah.
it was right after the Zach Brown show, and it was like the 12th time that he sold out Fenway Park. And so the journalist that was writing this article was curious about the same exact thing.
Mm.
We're in Boston. Why are all these people wearing cowboy boots and cowboy hats in Boston? This makes no sense, And so he was really curious about kind of this, what has been burgeoning for a very long time, actually, but kind of this burgeoning country scene in the Northeast. And so we talked a lot about it. And, there are actually quite a few country fans up here. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about in the very beginning of our conversation, where you know, country is, I will always, always, forever, and always love that really twangy country, right? Like Loretta Lynn is one of my favorite artists of all time. Um, but I think that version of country was not super accessible to a lot of people. But now when you have, Florida Georgia Line, and you've got like the more rock and roll kind of acts. You've got like Dustin Lynch, right? You've got Zach Brown. They're all different. They're all different, like sides of the same coin, right? So like
Yep.
Florida Georgia Line is introducing more hip hop beats. Dustin Lynch is introducing a little bit more rock. Zach Brown is like a lot more kind of like that, like Jimmy Buffett kind of vibe, right?
Americana. Yeah.
Yeah, like kind of Americana, but also like there's a lot of Jimmy Buffett influences in Zach's music, right?
He did a song with Jimmy Buffett, right?
Yeah, right. So, it's kind of that like
If you
feel
need to
good
close your
kind of.
blinds, by the
I
way, you
don't
need
have
to.
any blinds. I just moved
Oh,
into this house and I have no
oh, I'm
blinds.
sorry.
I know. That's why I'm like sitting here like this. The sun is
Captain
like,
of a ship.
I know. Hello. So anyway, I think that because country music and also of course also too, we can't forget like all the pop influences too, right? Like with Maren Morris and Dan and Shay and all
Mm,
those artists as well. I think that country music has become a lot more accessible to a wider group of people.
mm,
And I don't think that that's wholly unintentional, right?
yeah,
Because artists have to make money too, right? So I
yeah,
think with that kind of new invention of country music, I think there's a lot of people that actually see its value, and the musicians in country music are super talented. Like
absolutely.
they're really, really talented, and the songwriting is really solid, and the stories are still good. So you still have that backbone of country music, which to me is the songwriting and the storytelling. You just have it in a few different modalities of different kinds of genres that are starting to creep in. So I think that there are rock and roll fans, and there are hip hop fans, and there are like reggae fans, right? And now they're hearing these country music artists on the radio that are including those sounds, and so they're becoming country music fans too. And then they dive a little deeper and they find other subgenres within country, and they kind of really just cling to it.
Yeah,
So yeah, so I think that there are quite a few country acts or country fans and country acts, but country fans in the Northeast.
sure.
And then to her question about how hard it is to get gigs. So I will say, from the beginning, I'm a songwriter, right? I write all my own material. And it was hard, like when I was first getting started, people didn't want to hear original country music coming from anybody up here at
Right.
all, right? So people just wanted to hear, covers. They wanted to hear Carrie Underwood. They wanted to hear Maren Morris. They wanted to hear, Miranda Lambert, which I love all of those women. They're all incredibly powerful and strong. But they didn't want to hear what I had to say. And, slowly but surely, I did introduce a few covers into my set, but my set is still, 90% original music. And so it took a long time to get momentum, because a lot of booking agents and a lot of venues were like, well, we only really want to hire cover artists, cover acts.
Right.
Um, and so then eventually what I did was I just started to lie. And they were like, do you play covers? And I'm like, yeah, I play a lot of covers. Yeah, it's mostly covers,
Oh,
mostly covers. And then I would play my original stuff and people would respond better to my original stuff than they would to the covers. And so then venues started seeing like, oh, actually, like people actually really like her original stuff. So let's book her because she's great. And
mm,
people are really interested in it and they like it and they want more of it. So yeah, so it was hard to get momentum, but I think, now people are more interested in hearing what I have to say as opposed to the covers that I do. And I'm really picky about the covers that I play. Like I'll do like vintage country covers. So I'll do like Loretta Lynn or I'll do Merle Haggard. So I'll do
nice.
outlaw country as well. And I'll also do like really, really weird ones that are like really just on the edge of country, right? So like I do Hurt So Good by John Mellencamp, which it's like you take that song, you add a fiddle, it's a country song, right?
And it is, like I said, that Americana kind
Right.
of heartland, quote unquote, like even Tom Petty, certain Tom Petty
Oh
tunes
yeah.
can,
It's country through and through.
yeah. Well, look
I
at
mean, you can even hear
Gainesville,
it. There's a little
Florida.
bit of
I
Chinese
mean,
voice when he sings.
yeah. I mean,
So, those are the kinds of songs. I do like Pete Seeger, not Pete Seeger, Bob Seeger. Big difference. Big difference. I do Bob Seeger, so I do Danger Zone and a couple other Bob Seeger tunes. Like Night Moves. Night Moves is my jam. I love that one.
that
But
is
same
a,
thing,
yeah,
yeah, same thing. You take Night Moves, you add a fiddle, you got a country song,
that is
right?
true.
So those are the kinds of covers that I do. And they always play really, really well.
Right. Yeah. Mom will be glad to know those answers there. But speaking of family relatives and everything, so you wrote the song Nashville Angel, which I listened to this morning,
Mhm.
which I can only describe as a perfect honky tonk ballad.
Well, thank you.
And I mean it, of course. Was that written about your grandmom, I figure?
Yeah, as with my grandmother. So
Oh,
she was the other huge musical influence in my life. She loved Nashville, loved it, loved it. So her and my grandfather went to Nashville for their honeymoon. And so there's all these beautiful pictures of them like in the 40s, in all the spots in the Ryman and at the
mhm.
Frist and all these beautiful spots in Nashville. And she, when we were little girls, she would play all of her really old country that even like predated Loretta Lynn and Dolly Parton. So like, Lulu Bell and Scotty and, all those artists.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I was mesmerized by what she would play. And, my grandfather taught me how to waltz. So when I wrote this song, I actually wrote it as a waltz. I wrote it as a waltz and then I took it into the studio and they're like, nobody cuts anything in 3/4 anymore. Let's do 6/8. And I was like, okay. Which I think if I had recorded that song now, I would have been like, whatever, dude. No, we're doing it in 3/4. But you learn
Eh,
things as you learn
Wait,
things as you grow.
3/4 and 6/8 are really it's really just two sides of the same coin. It's just the same kind of, just maybe one's a little slower, you know?
Well, it doesn't really necessarily have to do with tempo. It has to do more with feel. So
Right.
three
Right.
four is
Yeah.
that real 3/4 is that real waltz feel where it's like oom ba ba oom ba ba.
Sure.
Whereas 6/8 feels a little bit more kind of flowing and a little bit more swayful. So it's like,
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Five,
6,
six.
1, right? So
Yeah.
the tempo, it doesn't really matter if the tempo is the same. It really has to do with more of the feel.
Right.
But anyway, I mean, I'm getting in the weeds, but
No,
um,
I love that kind of stuff too. Like everything I've played in 3/4 just happens to have been quick. So
yeah, yeah.
just there's this. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
No, no, it's fine. Yeah. So I was in Nashville. I was in Nashville because I go back and forth to Nashville a lot. My
Mhm.
studio's down there and I gig down there a lot. Um, and I I was staying at my friend's house, and I remember I was in the living room, very similar to this situation where like the light was pouring in on my face, and I was like, I want to write a song. My grandmother had just passed away. And I was like, I want to write a song. I don't really know what I want to write about. I was just kind of sitting, singing random words and whatever, just kind of, I didn't sit down to write a song about my grandmother. I just sat down to write a song and I didn't really know what exactly was going to come out. And so I sat down and fiddling around, and then I was playing in a 3/4 time. And then I just all of a sudden the first line of the chorus, I feel your hand on my shoulder, came out. And I was like, oh, maybe I should write a song about my grandmother. And so then I wrote the song in about like 30 minutes. And then I wrote it and I made a real quick little work tape. And then I just was laying on the floor sobbing my eyes out. And then I went and got my big tattoo on my arm.
Right.
And then I had a gig that night and I played this song at that gig for the first time. And I got through it barely. I had to take a minute after I was done with that song, and I cried a lot. But yeah, and I let people know. I was like, hey, I just wrote this song today. It's about my grandmother. She just passed away. I'm gonna do my best to get through it. And so it was great because the crowd was like so supportive and loving, and I mean,
Yeah,
naturally they eat that stuff up with a spoon.
sure. Yeah, I mean,
So I was in pain for two reasons. I was in pain because I was missing my grandmother, and I was in pain because
and
my
and
arm
the
hurt
and
my
the tattoo.
tattoo.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, but by the time the first chorus was around, I'm going, where's my Kleenex?
Yeah, I know.
I was
I
nearly
know.
there. So it's like, that's a thing when you can reach someone through a song and you have nothing to do with the person. Like I know we've met and we've talked before, but it's like I got it. I heard it, I knew it, and I felt it, and it's like, okay, well done, Eliza. So,
Well, thank you.
sure. Um, being you say you write your own material, a lot of current country singers and even farther back um, have not as I've noticed have in the liners of notes and stuff have not written their own material. There's singers who will sing the songs, but then there's
Yeah.
songwriters. I
Mhm.
mean, Brantley Gilbert, as far as I know, started with being a songwriter,
Yeah.
and
A lot
then
of you.
a lot of them do, yeah.
Mhm.
And I don't know what your take on that is. I know you and I love writing my own stuff too,
Mhm.
and it might be different in the rock world, but it's just come, and especially in pop, nobody writes in pop.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
it seems
Yeah.
kind of. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, yeah, it's fine. When I was first starting, um, and I was very young and naive, I was like, how could anybody sing somebody else's song? How could you not write your own songs? Blah, 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 right? Um, and then, I got a little bit more experience under my belt. And, one of the reasons why I don't do covers is because I'm terrible at it. I choose covers. I think, as I mentioned, I choose my covers very strategically, but, you know, I'm not great at singing other people's songs. I think that there is an emotion there that you need to be able to tap into that I struggle with, right? So I can sing my own songs, but and I can also, obviously I can feel the emotion of other songs, right? And I love singing other people's songs when I'm like by myself or I'm in my car, right? And those that music makes me feel very deeply. But if I have to do that on stage in front of people, and try to elicit the same emotional response that the original artist did when they either wrote it or recorded it, that's hard for me.
Oh yeah.
It's really hard for me. And so, I think I've really changed my perspective in that, you don't have to be a songwriter to be a really talented artist and to elicit very genuine, authentic emotion from people with your music. You don't have to have been the person who wrote it. Um,
Right.
and I think it's unfortunate that, I think within the music scene, I think that is kind of a common it's pretty elitist in my opinion. It's kind of a common and elitist opinion where a lot of artists that do write their own things have that opinion where, they're like, oh, well, their music isn't authentic or real because they didn't write it. And I just Yeah, I just don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I mean, humans are deeply feeling beings, and you know, just because you didn't write something doesn't mean that you can't create with that thing. I think it's the song becomes a paintbrush, and then what the artist does with it is they paint the picture with the paintbrush, right? Uh,
I
and
yeah,
so I think yeah, like I don't like look down on artists that don't write their own music.
well, to be fair, neither do I. I'm just making an observation.
Yeah, sure.
It's because I was noticing someone who I don't necessarily like all her music, but I admire the gusto that Taylor Swift has to write her own material.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, talk about a phenomenon. She's
Well, yeah, I mean,
something
like
else.
to be however old she was and says, "No, I'm going to write my own stuff," and they just went, "Okay," and look what she's, you know, of course,
Yeah.
more pop stuff now, but who cares? If that's what she wanted to do, then there it is.
Well, in her
Um,
song, I think that that's why people resonate so much with her, right? Is because she is in the pop realm, but her songwriting hasn't really changed, right? Like she's still telling stories and she's still really using like vivid imagery and
sure,
really connecting with her audience. Like she's using, I think, what she learned being a country artist and just translating that into a pop genre, right? So I think all the same reasons why people love country music because they really connect to the story and the emotion.
yeah,
And, it's less about, it's kind of, though this is changing, but it's, originally country music was less about the production aspect and more about the storytelling aspect.
right,
I think she's taken that and brought that to her music in
absolutely.
everything she does. I mean, she's incredible.
I mean, songwriters right off the bat for me, lyrically, because there are some instrumentalists who are fantastic storytellers just through their
Oh
instruments.
yeah.
But as regards lyrics, off the top of my head, for me, that just, blow my mind consistently. Tom Petty, Ricky
Yeah.
Warwick, um, some Johnny Cash. I mean,
Mhm.
how many people have said Bob Dylan? But yes.
Yeah. The
um,
elephant in the room, Bob Dylan. I mean, that's why I love Loretta Lynn so much, is because,
oh,
her lyrics, like, I mean, and she was writing in like the 70s, right? And her music is still so relevant for the female experience
mhm,
today, 50 years on, which is, sad, but true. And so I think like the way that she was able to harness the female perspective and female power and, you know, female frustration at
yeah.
systemic misogyny, I think
Mhm,
is so poignant. And she's brilliant, she's a genius. And so I think you know that's one of the reasons why I really resonate with her lyric writing, and I try to really um like imbue her spirit when I write my music, right? So
yeah,
really showcasing feminine power and feminine perspectives and feminine sexuality and all of the things that Loretta really championed,
sure.
are things that really influenced my lyric writing.
Yeah. Did you see the Ken Burns documentary on country music?
No, you're the second person that's asked me that this week, actually. I
Oh,
need to, and it's been on my
you
list.
must.
I
You
have I
must.
have two small children, so it's hard to do
Oh, of
anything.
course. Well, watch
But
it
it's on
with.
my list.
There's no. It's family friendly. You don't need to.
Oh yeah, no, I know. I just, they would not be interested in it. They'd be bored.
I
But
understand that.
no, it's on my list. I've heard it's incredible.
It. I've watched the whole 8 hour thing like three times.
Yeah,
There's this whole great. I think Loretta is in it, like not like
yeah,
being interviewed, because
yeah,
she only recently passed, like
yeah,
within the last 5 years or so.
yeah, not too long ago.
Not even so, like, and Ken Burns takes like 20 years to make his documentaries.
Yeah, yeah,
So, but respect where quality over quantity.
yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah.
and there's this line in there where she's talking, where Loretta Lynn's talking about Tammy Wynette and
Oh yeah.
and the song "Stand by Your Man."
And
And
I
sure,
yeah.
of course, and of course, the first time I heard that was in the Blues Brothers film.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, the
I grew
what?
up, I mean, I grew up in Illinois, so I grew up watching Blues Brothers.
What
And I was not,
are there
I
really
didn't
that
grow
many
up
car
too far away
crashes?
from Joliet, actually. I was about like 15 minutes away from Joliet.
Oh, okay, okay.
Mhm.
what did I forget what comic said it. He goes, no prisoner who breaks out of prison is going to hang around, so it's good to live near a prison. No one's going to stay around if they bust out.
That's right. That's right. It's true.
Right. Hey, but what Loretta Lynn had said, she said something like Tammy Wynette should have sung her songs and Loretta Lynn should have sung her songs because what was it? Tammy Wynette was married like 7 times, but she kept
Yeah,
singing "Stand by Your Man."
I know. Oh, God bless.
Oh well, it's just it is what
I
it is.
know.
But it's just like I love. There was another line in there too, was somebody was saying something about I think it was Marty Stewart was saying half of it or more in music is just showing up. And then the other guy in the production room just goes, "What about George Jones? He never showed up."
Yeah. And I think that that experience is very specific to the male experience in music
Mm,
and not necessarily the female experience, right? I
I
think like
know.
men can just kind of show up and it's good and women really have to hustle. And that's exactly like really what Garth and Trisha were really talking about. I mean,
Right.
Garth totally hustled, right? Like nobody wanted to sign him, nobody wanted anything to do with him
Yeah.
when they listened to his work tapes, and then they actually saw him live, and then they understood because he is just such a cult personality.
Yeah.
But for Trisha, you know, it, she had to hustle that much harder, right? I mean, and so I think,
Yeah.
as funny as that is, as funny as that, that story is, like, I think, yeah, that's very much, I think, specific to the male
Right.
experience,
No. Yeah.
especially in country music. But yeah.
Oh, sure. So for Eliza Smith, what's up for you next? What you
Yeah, so I just finished getting all the content, supporting content together for my new EP that I'm releasing. I'm going to start releasing it in January,
nice.
one song at a time. So it's called Spirit on the Run. It's a lot of really great songs. I'm very, very excited about it. I can't wait to share it with the world. So yeah, lots of really good stuff to kind of ring in the new year.
Thank you so much. All right,
Yeah, no problem.
I'm gonna stop the recording here, and I think we are done. For more of my original content, visit my website, www.andyconley.com.